Before he was a legend, before he was the voice of the working man, Merle Haggard was a problem not just for the law, but for the music industry itself. A man who didn't fit into Nashville's tight mold, who refused to sing only what they told him to sing, and who was brave or stubborn enough to tell the ugly truths of the American experience.
This is not the story of San Quentin. You already know that one.
This is the story of what came after, how a convict-turned country star outwitted the very system that tried to contain him and reshaped country music from the outside in. Merle Haggard's release from San Quentin in 1960 didn't mark the end of his sentence, it marked the beginning of his war against expectation.
Society expected him to fail. Nashville expected him to fall in line.
Instead, he made a vow, he'd never be poor again, never be silent again, and never be told who he was. Haggard returned to Bakersfield with nothing but ambition and a voice that carried the grit of hard time. The music industry, still polishing rhinestones and leaning heavily on sweet-sounding choruses, had no room for songs that sounded like bar fights or back alleys. But Merle found his own world, the bars, the clubs, the oilfield crowds who didn't want perfection, they wanted honesty.
And Merle gave it to them.
Raw, real, loud. The Bakersfield sound was his escape route. Fender guitars, sharp drums, and lyrics that didn't shy from the dirt. He wasn't singing for radio, he was singing for people like himself. Early performances at places like the Lucky Spot and the Blackboard Cafe gave Merle a testing ground. Back then, he was playing cover songs, Lefty Frizzell, Hank Williams, Bob Wills. But his voice wasn't just an echo, it was a warning shot. One club owner said, he didn't just sing a song, he lived it. The local scene gave him a shot in the arm. And one night, when Stewart didn't show up for his set, Merle got the call. That night, he didn't just fill in, he took over.
Stewart was impressed and helped Merle get his first real recordings out.
His first single, Skid Row, wasn't a hit, but it caught ears. It was just the start.
Capitol Records took a chance on Haggard in 1965.
Producer Ken Nelson wasn't sure what to make of him, this raw, unpolished guy with a record. But when Merle sang, everything stopped. Strangers hit the charts. It wasn't a smash, but it proved something. Merle had a sound, a voice from the edge. That same year, he recorded, My Friends Are Gonna Be Strangers, a song soaked in betrayal and heartache.
Suddenly, Merle Haggard wasn't just some ex-con with a guitar. He was a rising star.
What followed was a streak that would define country music for years. Swinging Doors, The Bottle Let Me Down, I Threw Away the Rose, and Branded Man weren't just hits, they were confessions. They were Merle admitting who he was, a man with scars, flaws, and a whole lot of pain. But Merle's genius wasn't just in writing about misery, it was in making misery sound beautiful. The melancholy in his phrasing, the steel guitar weaving through the verses, the unshakable rhythm section, this was Bakersfield grit with Nashville reach. And Merle didn't play by the rules. He refused to clean up his lyrics or sand off the rough edges. When Capitol asked for safer songs, Merle gave them rawer ones.
He wasn't being reckless, he was being real.
While the outlaw country movement gained steam in the 1970s, Waylon growing his beard, Willie moving to Austin, Merle stood apart.
He was an outlaw,
but he wasn't going to join a club to prove it.
He never wore a bandana, never posed with a joint. He didn't need to. He let his songs speak for him. Mama Tried wasn't just a chart topper, it was a window into his guilt, his shame, his attempt to honor the woman who tried to keep him straight. And then came Sing Me Back Home, arguably the most haunting country song ever recorded. A tale of death row, written by a man who knew its shadow firsthand. Then came Okie from Muskogee, a cultural flashpoint. The song was misread, reread, praised and attacked.
Some saw it as a red state anthem, others saw it as satire.
Merle never gave a clear answer. Maybe because the truth was somewhere in between.
He later said, that song was about how my dad would have felt.
So was Merle the Okie? The rebel? The patriot? The cynic? The answer was yes, he was all of it.
Okie from Muskogee brought Merle mainstream attention, but it also put him in a political crossfire. Conservatives hailed him, liberals vilified him. But the funny thing was Merle never really changed. He believed in hard work, he hated snobbery, and he had a deep empathy for people on the margins.
Take If We Make It Through December,
a song about a laid-off factory worker trying to give his daughter a Christmas.
That wasn't politics, that was reality.
Merle said more about America's economic despair in one verse than most politicians did in a campaign. Yet he could write the fight inside of me, a chest-thumping defense of America, and mean it just as much.
People didn't understand.
They wanted Merle to pick a side, but Merle didn't pick sides. He was the side of the confused, the struggling, the tired, the side that saw the country's beauty and its brokenness all at once.
And Nashville? Nashville wasn't ready for that complexity. They preferred clean-cut heroes, but Merle gave them a mirror instead. As the 70s turned into the 80s, Merle's relationship with Nashville grew colder. Executives wanted hits. They wanted polished acts. Merle gave them stories, gave them truth. He clashed with label executives who wanted him to record songs he didn't write, who wanted more strings, more gloss. He walked away from deals, dropped producers. At one point, he said, "They wanted me to be something I'm not. I'd rather be broke than be fake." And sometimes, he was financially broke. Haggard's battles with the IRS became legendary. He'd sell out arenas and still be behind on taxes. He never stopped working, but the money always seemed to slip away. He lived in a tour bus. He ran through managers. He fell in and out of love. But he kept writing and recording. Big City, released in 1981, wasn't just a comeback. It was a statement. An anthem for anyone who ever felt crushed by urban life. For the truck drivers, the mechanics, the dreamers. It hit #1, proved he still had it. Then came Are the Good Times Really Over? A song soaked in sorrow, nostalgia, and fear. It asked the question millions were afraid to say aloud. It wasn't just a song, it was a sermon. Merle never stopped experimenting. He recorded tribute albums to Jimmie Rodgers and Bob Wills. He collaborated with George Jones and Willie Nelson. He explored jazz, swing, gospel. He didn't care about genre walls. He just cared about emotion. When young artists chased trends, Merle chased meaning. When the radio moved on, Merle moved deeper. Songs like Kern River confounded executives. It was too slow, too sad, too poetic. But Merle believed in it. He once said, "Kern River is the best song I ever wrote." Critics didn't always agree. Radio didn't always play along. But Merle had long stopped caring about approval. He was writing for the people who listened with their hearts. The 90s brought country music into a glitzy new era. But Merle kept playing clubs, fairs, theaters. Sometimes the sound systems were bad. Sometimes the crowds were small. But Merle gave it all. And slowly, a new generation discovered him. Artists like Eric Church, Jamie Johnson, and Casey Musgraves started name-dropping Merle. Not for clout but for compass. He was their North Star. He earned Grammy Awards, got inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame, received the Kennedy Center honor. But more than plaques and ceremonies, Merle gave country music its backbone. He showed that real didn't mean perfect. That pain could be poetry. That you didn't need to sell your soul to sell records. When he died on April 6, 2016, his 79th birthday, the world didn't just lose a legend, it lost a truth-teller. Until the end, Merle kept touring, kept writing, kept telling the truth. He died on his birthday in 2016, as if writing the final verse to his life. He never changed for the industry. The industry changed because of him. This is Merle Haggard's true legacy, not just as a voice of rebellion, but as a man who redefined what country music could be, not from inside the system, but from the outside, looking in. By the early 2000s, Merle Haggard had lived a dozen lives. He had survived prison, industry exile, IRS battles, and broken hearts. Yet, somehow, in his later years, he wasn't just surviving, he was thriving creatively. While mainstream country radio all but ignored him, Merle was making some of the most soul-stirring, stripped-down music of his entire career. He didn't need the charts anymore. He had something bigger, freedom. His voice aged like whiskey. It deepened, roughened, and gained new texture. It didn't sound young. It sounded true. And fans who had grown up with him, as well as younger artists looking for something real in a sea of glitter, started leaning in closer. Merle's music in the 2000s wasn't chasing the moment. It was timeless. Albums like If I Could Only Fly, 2000, and Chicago Wind, 2005, weren't big radio hits, but critics raved. These were records full of meditations on aging, regret, patriotism, loneliness, and grace. Songs like Wishing All These Old Things Were New cut through nostalgia and sentimentality like a scalpel through silk. He didn't avoid the shadows. He explored them. Sometimes I wish I hadn't stayed so long at the fair, he sang. It was a line soaked in weariness, as if even his own legend had grown too heavy to carry. One of the brightest threads in Merle's twilight years was his friendship and collaboration with Willie Nelson. These two men, different in tone but united in spirit, had both outlived their doubters and critics. They'd been labeled outlaws by the industry and turned the insult into an institution. In 2015, when they released Django and Jimmy, it was more than just a duet album. It was a reunion of philosophies, a celebration of a lifelong brotherhood. The title track, honoring Django Reinhardt and Jimmie Rodgers, made it clear Merle and Willie weren't just country singers, they were historians, troubadours, and stewards of an American tradition. One of his final performances came just a few months before his death.
in February 2016. He could barely stand, but he played Sing Me Back Home, his voice shaking but intact. A few weeks later, he was hospitalized again. Merle Haggard died on April 6, 2016, his 79th birthday. It felt poetic, scripted by the universe, as if Merle had waited to finish his last verse, then stepped off stage. He passed away in his California home in Palo Cedro, surrounded by family. The country music world responded with heartbreak and reverence. Dolly Parton said, "We've lost one of the greatest writers and singers of all time." Willie Nelson tweeted simply, "He was my brother, my friend. I will miss him." But it wasn't just stars who mourned. It was truckers and welders, waitresses and factory workers, lifelong fans who saw their own lives in his songs. Because Merle never sang at the people, he sang with them. Merle's legacy can't be measured in Grammys, though he won several, or Hall of Fame plaques, he had them, or Kennedy Center honors, he got those too. His true legacy lives in the way modern country music bends around his influence even when it tries to pretend it doesn't. You hear it in the lyrics of Jason Isbell, the tone of Sturgill Simpson, the phrasing of Chris Stapleton, the resistance in Zach Bryan. His fingerprints are everywhere even when unacknowledged. He taught country artists that it was okay to write your truth, even when it was uncomfortable, even when it meant losing radio play, even when it meant standing alone. In the end, Merle Haggard proved something few artists ever do, that it's possible to walk away from the industry machine and still build something that lasts. That authenticity doesn't just sell, it resonates. That flaws can become virtues. That rebellion doesn't require noise, it requires truth. He didn't chase perfection, he chased real, and in doing so, he gave country music its most human voice. He left behind over 70 albums, dozens of no.1 hits, and countless unreleased songs tucked in notebooks and tapes. But more than anything, he left behind a message: be who you are, say what you feel, and never let anyone else write your story. Thank you for watching today's video. Don't forget to leave a comment, like, share and subscribe. Also be sure to leave comment down below who should we make next video about. See you in next video.